Hello and welcome to Algebra 1 Test Section 1 on factoring by grouping. All right, so we want to factor each by grouping. So let's take a look at n cubed minus 4n squared plus 3n minus 12. So the first thing I want to do is set this up as two groups of two terms each, where each group has a common factor. And that common factor might have to be 1 or negative 1. So if I look at kind of the way it's set up now, let's say I put these two into a group and these two into a group. And I said, okay, well, the common factor here would be n squared. And the common factor here would be 3. So if I pulled that out, so if I had n squared times, what would be left in this group? Well, it would be n minus 4. And then if I pulled out a 3 here, I'd have plus 3 times n minus 4. So doing this yields a common binomial factor, this n minus 4. And we can further pull this out, further factor this, and just say, okay, if I pulled out n minus 4, it would be multiplied by, so I pulled it out from here, I'd have n squared, plus, I pulled it out from here, I'd have 3. So I'd have n minus 4, that quantity, times the quantity n squared plus 3. And if I used FOIL here, I would get exactly back what I started with. All right, let's take a look at another one. We have 5b cubed plus 4b squared plus 20b plus 16. So again, I want to look at two groups of two where each group has a common factor. So if I start out with the way they're arranged now, I can see that I could pull out a b squared from this, and I could pull out a 4 from this. So let's set that up. If I pulled out a b squared from the first two, I'd have a 5b plus a 4. If I pulled out a 4 from here, I'd have a 5b plus a 4. So again, a common binomial factor, which is what we're looking for. So we're going to pull this guy out. We're going to pull this guy out, set it in front of some parentheses, so 5b plus 4. And then what's left? Well, I'd have b squared, this was pulled out, plus a 4, right? This was pulled out. So you get 5b plus 4, that quantity, times the quantity b squared plus 4. And again, if you do FOIL on this, if you multiply these out, you're going to end up with this back, right? This 4-term polynomial, 5b cubed plus 4b squared plus 20b plus 16. Hello and welcome to Algebra 1 Test Section 2 on factoring by grouping. All right, so we want to factor each by grouping. And we're going to start out with 120xy minus 160x minus 48y plus 64. So if I look at this, before I even start, I notice that all the numbers here are even. So I know they're divisible by 2, but additionally I notice that they're all divisible by 4. And then also they're divisible by 8. So I could pull out an 8 before I begin. So 120 divided by 8 is 15. So 15xy minus 160 divided by 8 is 20. So 20x. Minus 48 divided by 8 is 6, so 6y, plus 64 divided by 8 is 8. So now, inside the parentheses, I would work just like I normally do. Let's set these two up as a group and these two up as a group. And what I'm looking to see here is what can I pull out of each group. So in the first group, I could pull out what? I could pull out a 5x. In the second group, I could pull out a 2. So what would that give me if I did that? Well, in this one, let's put equals here. I'd have my 8 out in front. I'd have 5x times. I would have 3y minus, if I look at this one, I would have 4. Then over here, if I pull out a 2, I'd put plus 2. I'd have a negative 3y. And then I would have plus 4. Now, if I look at this, I have 3y here. I have negative 3y here. I have negative 4 here. I have positive 4 here. So I have the same thing, just different signs. So I can fix that by just making one of these negative. So if I just factored out a negative 2 instead, if I said plus negative 2 here, I would just change the sign of each term. So this would be plus 3y. This would be minus 4. And so I would match this completely. I would now have a common binomial factor. A common binomial factor. So let's pull that guy out. So we're going to pull this out. I still have my 8 out in front. And then I have my 3y minus 4. And then what's left? I'd have 5x, and I'd have plus -2 or just -2. So my answer here is 8 times the quantity 3y minus 4 times the quantity 5x minus 2. And again, if you were to check this, just multiply everything together, and you should get this back exactly. The 120xy minus 160x minus 48y plus 64. All right, let's look at the next one. We have 4mn minus 12m minus 10n plus 30. All right, so if I look at this, I know that everything is divisible by 2. So I can start by just pulling that out. So 2 times, we'd have 2mn minus 6m minus 5n plus 15. And again, if you don't do that when you start, when you get to kind of your last step where you report your answer, you're going to have something else you can factor out. So you won't have factored it completely. And if you leave it like that, if you don't factor it completely, your teacher's going to at minimum take some points off on your test. All right, so if I look at this the way it is, again, if I set this up as a group and this up as a group, well, I could pull a 2m out from here, and I could pull out a 5 from here. So that would give me 2 times, in here I'd have 2m times n minus 3. And then if I pulled out a 5, so plus 5 times, you would have -n plus 3. And again, it's the same situation as before. You have n here, -n. -3, +3. So to go ahead and just change this sign to negative, this can be plus now, and this can be negative. So now it matches completely. We have n minus 3, we have n minus 3. So a common binomial factor. And we could just pull that guy out. So we'll pull this guy out. We'll have 2 times n minus 3, the common binomial factor, times 2m minus 5. So again, 2 times the quantity n minus 3 times the quantity 2m minus 5. And again, if you wanted to check this, you could multiply all this together, and you would see that you get the original polynomial back, which is 4mn minus 12m minus 10n plus 30. Hello and welcome to Algebra 1 Test Section 3 on factoring by grouping. All right, so we want to factor each by grouping. We're going to take a look at 75bc minus 27x squared d plus 45bd minus 45x squared c. So before I even start, I notice that everything here is divisible by 3. This is 3 times 25. This is 3 times 9. This is 3 times 15, and so is this. So if I pulled out a 3 to start, I'd have 3 out in front of a set of parentheses, and I'd have 25bc minus 9x squared d plus 15bd minus 15x squared c. So now if I look at kind of the way it's laid out now, let's say these were the first group and then these were the second group. What can I pull out of that first group? Well, variable-wise, nothing. Number-wise, nothing. 25 is 5 times 5, 9 is 3 times 3. So really just 1. Over here, I could pull out a 15, and that's really it. I could pull out a 15 or a -15. I can't really do anything else. If I pulled out a 15, I'd have BD minus x squared c. That's not going to do anything with this over here. I need a common binomial factor. So we've got to rearrange the terms. So let's try to put where we have the variables that are common next to each other. So let's do 3 times, we'll do 25bc plus 15bd, and then minus 9x squared d, and then minus 15x squared c. So if I look at this now, for the first group, I could pull out a 5b. So that would leave me with 5c plus 3d. In the second group, I could pull out a 3 or a -3 if I wanted to. So let's say 3x squared. Now, the signs over here are all positive, so I know I have to pull out a -3x squared. So if I do that, I'd have 3d plus 5c. It's exactly what we have here. It's just in a different order. So let's go ahead and execute that. So we're going to do 3 times, I'll have 5b pulled out of the first group. So that would be 5c plus 3d. And then in the second group, I'm going to pull out a negative 3x squared. And so again, that's going to give me a positive 3d plus, because I'm pulling out a negative and this is negative, it's going to be a 5c. And again, I can rearrange these terms to where it looks the same as this over there, but they're already the same, right? The commutative property of addition tells us that the order that we add in does not affect the result. So once I see that, I have a common binomial factor, I can just pull that guy out. So I'd have 3, and then I'd have times, we have 5c plus 3d, and then times, I have a 5b left, and then minus 3x squared. Okay, so that's our answer. 3 times the quantity 5c plus 3d times the quantity 5b minus 3x squared. Hello and welcome to Algebra 1 Test Section 4 on factoring by grouping. All right, so we want to factor each by grouping. And we're going to start out by looking at 24n squared mc minus 75n cubed k plus 60n squared mk minus 30n cubed c. So before I kind of get started here, you might want to notice that everything is divisible by a 3, right? 24 is 3 times 8. 75 is 3 times 25. 60 is 3 times 20. And then 30 is 3 times 10. Then additionally, everything here has an n, and the smallest exponent is a 2. So I can pull out a 3n squared from everything before I even begin. So let's start out by doing that. So let's do 3n squared times, in here, 24 divided by 3 is 8. N squared over n squared is 1, so you'd have 8mc minus 75 divided by 3 is 25. N cubed over n squared is n, and then times k, and then plus 60 divided by 3 is 20. N squared over n squared is 1, and then mk. Okay, then we have minus 30 over 3 is 10. N cubed over n squared is n, and then we have c, and then close the parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to put equals, and if I look inside now, so 3n squared, I'm going to start out with these two as a group and these two as a group. So if I look, 25 I know is 5 times 5, and 8 is 3 factors of 2. 2 times 2 times 2. Nothing I can really do there other than a 1. This is MC and this is NK. So that's not really, there's nothing I can really pull out other than 1. For this one, I could pull out a 2, and that's it. So if I pulled out a 2 from here, I'd have 10MK, and I'd have 5NC. That's not going to work. I'm looking to pull out a common binomial factor in the end. So this grouping does not work, so I need to change it up. So let's put 8MC next to 20MK, and let's put negative 25NK next to negative 10NC. So what can we do here? Well, with this one, I can pull out a 4M. So that would leave me with a 2C and a 5K. Over here, I could pull out, let's do a negative 5N. So that would leave me with 5K and a 2C. So that's exactly what we want to do. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's put equals. So I have my, again, 3n squared. And I'm pulling out, again, a 4m. So inside, the 8 divided by 4 would be 2. M over m is 1, so 2c. Then plus 20 divided by 4 is 5. M over m is 1. And then k. So then in this one, I'm going to pull out a negative 5n. So I'm going to put plus negative 5n. And then times. This is 5 and then k. And then this is plus. Negative 10 over negative 5 is 2. N over n is 1, so I'd have c. So now I can see that I have a common binomial factor. It's 2c plus 5k. And I know here it says 5k plus 2c, but again, you can reorder that. Remember, addition is commutative, so I can just change the order around here, and it's the same thing, right? It's 2c plus 5k. Okay, so once we've done this, let's factor out this common binomial factor. So I'm going to have 3n squared times the common binomial factor, which is 2c plus 5k, then times, I'd have 4m minus 5n. And it's just that simple. We have 3n squared times the quantity, 2c plus 5k, times the quantity, 4m minus 5n. And again, if you wanted to check this, multiply this all together, and you'd end up with your original 4-term polynomial back, which was 24n squared mc minus 75n cubed k plus 60n squared mk minus 30n cubed c. Hello and welcome to Algebra 1 Test Section 5 on factoring by grouping. All right, so we want to factor each by grouping. And we're going to take a look at 72xy plus 64n to the 4th power plus 96xn cubed plus 48ny. So you'll notice here before you even start, everything is divisible by 8. This is 8 times 9. This is 8 times 8. This is 8 times 12. And this is 8 times 6. So I can pull out that 8 before I start. It's going to save me a little bit of work in the end. So again, this would be 9xy plus 8n to the 4th power plus 12xn cubed. And then lastly, plus 6ny. So again, I want to set this up into two groups of 2 terms each. And I always just start out with looking at the first 2 and the final 2. See if I can get anything out of there. If you look here, they don't have any variables in common. For the numbers, 9 is 3 times 3, 8 is 3 factors of 2. Nothing I can really do other than 1 or negative 1. Here it's going to be, I can pull out a 6, and that's it. So if I pulled out a 6 here, I'm really going to have what? I'm going to have a 2xn cubed plus ny. I'm not going to have a common binomial factor, so this isn't going to work. So I need to change this up, and if I put these two next to each other, they have a common factor of 3x. If I put these two next to each other, they have a common factor of 2n. So let's go ahead and do that and see what we get. So we have 8 times the quantity. I'm going to have 9xy plus 12xn cubed plus 8n to the 4th power plus 6ny. Let's get a little room going. So if I look here again, if I pulled out a 3x, that would leave me with a 3y, and it would leave me with a 4n cubed. If I pulled out a 2n, that would leave me with a 4n cubed, and it would leave me with a 3y. So the same terms. They're not going to be in the same order, but it's the same terms, right? We're adding, addition is commutative. I can just switch the order. It's going to be the same. So let's go ahead and pull those out. So we would have, again, 8 times, inside of parentheses, 3x times, you'd have your 3y plus 4n cubed. Then plus, I'd have my 2n outside, and inside I'd have 4n cubed plus 3y. So again, all I have to do is change the order of one of these, or you can leave it as it is. It doesn't matter, right? It's addition, it's commutative. You know, this 3y plus 4n cubed is the same as 4n cubed plus 3y. But for most students, they like it to be the exact same. So 3y plus 4n cubed, switch the order. You're legally allowed to do that. And so you have a common binomial factor here. We're going to pull that guy out. So we'd have 8 times that common binomial factor, 3y plus 4n cubed, times, what's going to be left? I have 3x plus 2n. And again, if you go through and multiply this out, you would get exactly the 4-term polynomial that you started with, the 72xy plus 64n to the 4th power plus 96xn cubed plus 48ny.